So, Katrina, we've been talking a little bit about your belief, I'm unlovable, kind of linked to that feeling of defectiveness, that feeling that you often describe. I'm wondering, can you think of times when that belief's strong for you, when that's triggered, in your life? What are the sorts of times that you feel that belief strongly?
I guess it kind of goes back to my childhood, is when we kind of talked about maybe that's when I first noticed it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And I'm thinking now, there are lots of triggers, eating disorder related triggers, we're like, you've talked a little bit about when you look in the mirror, that sometimes that belief comes up for you, or if you eat something that you hadn't planned to eat, that wasn't on your diet, on your dietary plan, those sorts of things, that old feeling comes up around this belief.
Yeah, or if I kind of gain weight,
If you gain weight.
yeah, or feel
And what's the
criticized.
feeling that goes with this belief?
um I just feel quite frustrated and angry at myself,
Yeah.
let myself down again. How could I do that?
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah. So kind of angry with yourself, frustrated. And is it a kind of a shame feeling? Does it feel
yeah, but
shameful?
I should have been able to stick to the plan, and
Right.
I shouldn't have been so greedy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that belief gets triggered. It's kind of under the surface, bubbling away there, isn't it? And it gets triggered in a lot of different situations. And when it does, it triggers off all this kind of shame, all this frustration, anger at yourself. You blame yourself. So it kind of is responsible for um, a lot of stuff that goes on in your life, and a lot of really difficult emotions. And I guess what I'd like to do today is just to look at this belief in a little bit more depth, and to look at whether the evidence for the belief really supports, supports it. And if it was in a court of law, would the evidence really support it, or would it refute it? This is what we, I guess, want to really start to unpick, because I guess something that we've uncovered in other exercises is, for you, it's your reality. For you, it just feels, that's me. That's just a fact. That's just the way I am. And sometimes it can be really revealing to look at what's driving this, and what are the sorts of evidence, bits of evidence that are there to support or refute it. Just to
There'll
give
be
you a
lots of
different,
evidence. There's lots of
yeah,
evidence.
yeah, feels like you've got lots of evidence.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we, if I share my screen with you. Okay, and so here we have this, I guess, table where we can just start to put all this information down, all this evidence. So first of all, does it still fit? I'm unlovable. Does that still feel like the right words for you? Yeah.
Yeah, that fits for me.
It's okay. So if we come here, first of all, to this column, and we're looking here at evidence that supports the schema. So what types of, I guess, things come to mind when you think about being unlovable or feeling unlovable as a child? What supports that idea that you were unlovable?
Well, I was quite different to my sisters. I talked a lot. Dad shouted at me all the time.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
sighed at me.
Yeah.
Mum was stressed when I was around. She was quite tense.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I only had two friends, and one of those friends left town with absolutely no explanation, and she attempted to take her own life.
Okay. And was that something that you kind of blamed yourself for?
Yeah, I think I definitely was part of that.
Yeah.
Maybe I wasn't a good enough friend,
Okay. Okay.
check in enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there's quite a bit of evidence there that feels like it supports that idea that you're unlovable. And is there anything else on that from childhood that comes to mind?
Just mum and dad never seemed happy when I was around.
Yeah. So it kind of felt like you were responsible, you were to blame for everyone else's unhappiness.
Yeah.
Okay. And so now let's move to adulthood. Are there any things that have happened in your adult life that make you feel like you're unlovable?
Well, I've still only got 2 friends. Can't seem to make friends really for them to stick around.
Yeah.
I'm not the person that my parents wanted me to be. Failed in that respect, let them down. I'm a disappointment. And then there's the anorexia of that's kind of ruined my life. Have regular admissions to inpatient units. Everything really. My house is a disaster. It's a mess.
Okay. And did you say anorexia has ruined your life or their life?
Everyone's. I've ruined my own life. I've ruined family's life, friends' life. Impacts a lot of areas of my life, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And it feels like you're the problem there, that you caused that.
Yeah, it's my fault that's it had an impact on them. That's my doing. Yeah, I'm just a lonely cat woman. I live alone. I've got 3 cats. I mean, I say I've got 2 friends, but I don't really see them that much. And, you know, I've never had a boyfriend. I'm a bit of a freak like that.
Never had a boyfriend.
Yeah, I mean, what's wrong with me?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And is there anything else on that list from adulthood that, I mean, because you've got quite a lot of things there already, but I just want to make sure before we move on.
I mean, it's in every aspect of my life, like work. I don't really have a job. As you know, I've never really achieved anything, so there's nothing, you know, good to say about my life really. Just one failure after another.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I was bullied at school.
Bullied at school, so that's one back here as well, isn't it?
Felt like an outsider, I guess, and that's kind of continued throughout adulthood, really. Don't feel like I particularly belong.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's another belief that's kind of tied up with this feeling of being unlovable, isn't it? There's also this sense that I'm different, I don't belong. So that's another one that we can come back to as well. It's tied up with that. So I wonder if we can jump to have a bit of a look at evidence from your childhood that isn't consistent with the schema. And this might be slightly harder to do, to really think about what things happened in childhood, if anything, and there will be things there, but it's just kind of sometimes focusing on them if you're not used to focusing on them, but maybe having a think about what didn't fit in. Did anybody show you love as a child or give you the sense that they loved you, or that they didn't find you unlovable?
That's a tricky one.
So it might be friends, it might be people in your life, it might be relatives, it might be pets, any kind of evidence.
Well, I guess my dog sometimes likes to sit on my knee and I take him for walks and seems to like it, but that's just a dog. Like, that's not really anything, you know, that's a bit pathetic really, isn't it?
Okay, well, we'll come back to that, because that bit, I can see that here. Isn't that interesting that as soon as we start talking about that evidence that doesn't fit in with the schema, the schema automatically starts fighting back. Oh, well, that doesn't really count because that's only a dog, and so so I'll pop that in there, and we'll come back to that, because that's really good that you're already picking up on that, noticing that. He's only a dog. What was how did you discount that?
Well, like, that's just pathetic, isn't it? He's just a dog. That doesn't really count.
That doesn't count.
You were talking about humans looking after me.
Okay.
The tough one. I guess my grandma used to make cakes for me on my birthday.
Okay. Yeah. Well remembered.
I always used to look forward to that.
Fantastic. What kind of cakes were they?
The bigger the better in my eyes.
Yeah.
Every year they got a bit taller with a different layer and different colors.
Oh, how lovely. It sounds really great. And so grandma really, it sounds like she really put a lot of thought into that.
Yeah.
To add layers on each year. Yeah. Anything else that you can think of from childhood? The things maybe that we've sort of talked about when we were talking about your background, things that don't fit.
I guess sometimes my sisters used to ask for me for some advice.
Mm-hmm.
And you might say that they used to rely on me a bit, even though I said that they were different. I guess they used to ask me for advice.
So they came to you rather than coming to your parents?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's really good, good evidence, isn't it? That it doesn't fit with that I'm unlovable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else in that one?
I guess there was a teacher at school that she really tried to help me and spent time with me when I was struggling or when I didn't understand something, and I think seemed to show a lot of time and effort to kind of put towards me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And were there any times that you noticed your parents were loving towards you or pleased with you?
Not really. I mean, I tried to get good grades to please my parents.
Okay. Yeah. So there was a sense of there were conditions for getting your parents' love, and you kind of trying hard. You're trying hard to be a good person and do the right thing, and yeah, to help.
Yeah, I tried to be this, person that they wanted me to be successful, and I tried to make friends and do well at school and try to be nice to others, but it's hard when people aren't nice back.
Yeah, that's really hard. Yeah, that's really hard. But I guess what that shows me as well, that you were trying really hard. You're trying really hard to be kind to others, to take care of others, to do the right thing. And again, that's not consistent with I'm unlovable. That sense in which you're really tuning into how other people feel, trying to make things easier for other people. That doesn't kind of fit with that belief, does it?
I guess.
It's hard to see that when you're used to seeing yourself in that way. What about as an adult? Is there any evidence as an adult that doesn't fit with the schema?
Thinking about animals again, I guess. I have 3 cats and they seem to want to be around me. They sit on my lap and they purr when I stroke them.
Great. That's really good. And do you have what about the friends that you've mentioned in the past? Do they?
I guess they seem to like me, like they invite me to things. They do stay in touch.
What was that, sorry?
They do stay in touch.
Stay in touch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And that's even in spite of you being in and out of hospital and not being available a lot of the time. So that's kind of, you know, more effort. And what about, I guess, us, you know, in our relationship with me as your therapist? Do you get the sense that I care about you? Does that kind of feel like that when I guess in the work that we're doing together?
Yeah. I feel like you believe in me maybe a bit more than I believe in myself. And I haven't scared you off. You seem to kind of stick around and care and trying to help me. I guess that just feels a bit familiar at times. Yeah.
That makes sense to me. You know, in a sense, it's unfamiliar, out of your comfort zone. And absolutely, I would say that, you know, of course, I don't find you remotely unlovable, and I think that you're a very lovable person. So I think you're absolutely spot on to bring that up as evidence. You know, there's so many things about you that I feel are lovable and endearing, and you know, when the more I get to know you, the more I kind of sense that, feel that. And is there anyone else that you would say in your life that enjoys spending time with you, or that kind of seeks you out?
Well, my nephew, whenever we kind of have a family get together, he always comes to me first and wants to show me things and take me places. And we have a good relationship. I enjoy hanging out with him, and I treat him to things, give him toys and books and things.
And children often have a way of seeing right to the core of people, don't they? They see what's right at the core, and that's really interesting to me that your nephew seeks you out when he has the opportunity. Now, if we come back to the childhood evidence, and what I'd like to do is just ask you, when we think about this, that your dad was shouting, your dad was sighing a lot, your mum was kind of stressed and tense, dad and mum were unhappy. I'm wondering, you know, I know that there's this that experience for you as a child, I felt like it must be me, it must be something to do with me. I'm wondering if there was more going on with them. What was happening with them at the time that led them to behave in this kind of very shouty, grumpy kind of way?
I guess Dad was grumpy and angry at everyone.
Okay, that's quite important.
Yeah, he was angry because Mum left. Mum had an affair. And they split up for a bit, but they got back together, but their relationship was quite disconnected. And Mum would work for long hours, whereas Dad would be at home with us, and I think he resented us, really. He felt he sacrificed himself.
And so, in a sense, he was unhappy with his relationship with your mum, and the dissatisfaction there kind of almost got moved or displaced onto you as kids. And it sounds like he was also shouty and angry at your sisters as well.
Yeah, and my nephew, he still communicates in that way now. He just, anytime I would ask for help or support, or anyone asks him for anything, his just, you know, token response was just to get angry and frustrated.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. And as a child, sometimes we don't see that, we don't notice that. But you know, that's really clear, isn't it? It's interesting when we look back now that it becomes, that bigger picture becomes clear. When we think about only having two friends at school, can you think of why that might have been, and why you were kind of prone to being, or why you were maybe felt different and felt like you didn't fit in?
I was really shy, anxious child. So it made me feel on edge the whole time. And like, my parents didn't really have friends. My dad was always just in front of the computer. Mum was always just working. So I feel like I didn't really know how to make friends, and
you didn't have role models to help you learn how to make friends.
Yeah, and I guess I got bullied, and so I think I just then didn't try to make friends anymore, because I just tried to distance myself from everyone.
Yeah, so that makes sense. And in a sense, you know, if you were already feeling negatively about yourself, already feeling unlovable from your experience at home, then it would make it hard for you to kind of feel good about yourself and stick up for yourself at school as well. And so, yeah, because bullies often pick on people who are not feeling so great about themselves. Not always, but if you're shy, you're not going to have that natural, I guess, tendency to kind of fight back, and bullies can pick on people that they perceive to be quieter. But that's not unlovable, is it? That's just you know, a temperament thing, which is you know, a nice thing, actually. Something that I find is quite lovely about you is your temperament. And so that's also why you're different to your sisters. You know, yeah, you've got a different temperament to them, but I wonder if your dad kicked off a bit more because you were chatty at home, because you were kind of more noisy at home, would you say? Or
maybe I didn't really think about it in that way. I think he just didn't know how to communicate in any other way.
Right.
That was his way of, you know, talking. It was
So when
one or the other.
Yeah. So when you were just trying to communicate, just trying to chat, just trying to connect and interact, which is a healthy thing, he kind of kicked off and didn't know how to manage that, didn't know how to deal with that in a healthy way, and kind of could be quite punitive and grumpy around that, which made you feel I'm different. There's something wrong with me. Does that fit?
Yeah, I guess within the family we didn't really communicate, and my sisters were, like you said, a lot quieter than me. Just like my mum was quite anxious. And I felt, because I talked a lot, I felt like I was taking up a lot of space, and dad responded badly to me.
Yeah, that makes sense. So even though that was a really healthy thing, that you were chatty, you were a talkative little girl at home, even though at school you were quite shy, at home that was where you had your chance to connect and be part of things. Dad just was not able to interact in a healthy way.
Yeah.
And if we think about your adult experiences, you only have two friends, you don't see them much. I'm not the person my parents wanted me to be. If we think about why you've only got two friends in adulthood, what think about the different possible reasons for that. Could that be linked to the things we were talking about in childhood, where
I guess it was, I didn't know how to make friends, and it was a bit scary to put myself out there and be vulnerable, and linked to the one about anorexia, you know, that takes up a lot of my time, my energy, consumes a lot of my thoughts, and it's kind of become my priority, which means there's less time for putting energy into friendships.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly. And less energy for keeping your house tidy and things like that, presumably, as well.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Why it is a bit of a mess, because by the end of the day that I'm knackered.
Yeah, yeah. When we think about the anorexia, and I know that you've kind of blamed yourself for that, that's a sign that I'm unlovable, that something wrong with me. Did you plan to get anorexia? Did you kind of sit down one day and think, right, well, this is my life plan. This is what I want for myself?
No, I don't want it. I didn't plan it. It just feels like it kind of happened to me, I guess.
Yeah. Exactly. And one of the things we've talked about in the context of other work that we've done is that's kind of been your way of trying to take up less space. And when we think about the messages you got from your dad in childhood, that would fit with that in a sense, you literally tried to take up less space, not in a planned or conscious way, but it kind of almost in an unconscious way that you shrunk yourself as a way of trying to adjust, trying to be a good girl, actually trying to be less have less impact on others.
Yeah, I just wanted my parents to be proud of me, but I didn't feel that they were.
Yeah. And why do you think that was? Why, when we think about their own life and whether they fulfilled their own ambitions, do you feel that they have unfulfilled ambitions in terms of their own life?
Yeah, I think so. I think they didn't achieve what they would like to have achieved, and they maybe links to their own kind of disappointments and insecurities. And
yeah. And so in a sense they expected you to fulfill their own expectations.
Yeah, felt like a lot to carry.
Yeah.
To carry.
And ultimately it's impossible to live someone else's life for them, and for you're a different person with a different personality and different skills and different, everything's different, and so that's not possible even for you, even with the best will in the world, to be to kind of almost be mini mum and mini dad.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we move to the way the evidence fights back. So maybe I'll just reel them off and you just tell me what the schema is saying back. So grandma made cakes on my birthday.
I guess grandma had to treat me the same as other grandchildren, even if she didn't like me.
Okay. And what about sisters asked you for advice?
I guess it was the least I could do to make up for being a burden on my family.
And the teacher at school helped you when you were struggling?
Oh, to be honest, she probably just felt sorry for me because I was a bit of a loser and I had no friends.
Yeah. Okay, so the schema just comes back, it just trips off the tongue, doesn't it? It's always got something to come back with. It doesn't really care about the evidence. Do you notice that? It just kind of, it has to kind of fit it into that file that I'm unlovable. Tried to get good grades to please your parents?
I tried. Didn't do it though, did I?
Yeah, okay.
So trying doesn't really fit it.
Trying isn't good enough.
Yeah.
Kind of like that. Yeah. And what about the cats wanting to be around you? Same sort of thing? Is it coming back with they're only cats, or is it saying something else?
They need feeding. They want food. They know I give them food.
Yeah, they only like me because of the food. And your friends?
I only really seem to make friends with other patients who have anorexia, perhaps they only like me because that's something we have in common. And
okay, yeah. Okay, and presumably these others are similar then, with Susan only believes in me because,
well, you're paid, it's your job, you're paid to do it. So
okay, yeah, so that's kind of dismissed that. The scheme is dismissed. Any care that I give you is only based on being paid for it. Yep. And what about your nephew? He's not paid?
He's just a kid, though. He doesn't really know the real me, and he just wants to hang out with someone who's going to play with him, and I spend time with him, so he'll put up with me.
Okay. So well done. So we've got these 4 columns here. So all of this evidence from childhood, when we look at the context here, we find that actually there was a lot going on in your childhood, a lot of things that kind of put it in context. In your adult life, we also kind of see that the anorexia has really got in the way and sabotaged you and sabotaged your relationships with others, and your time, just to kind of spend time on the parts of your life that you would love to be spending more time in. And that even when there is, and you did a great job of coming up with some evidence to refute the schema, but even then the schema doesn't care anyway about the evidence and fights back. So I guess what I'd like to do now is bring it together so that we can look at this summary of evidence. And I'll type as we go. And so I guess if we start off with something like, even though I believe, or even though my schema is that there's something unlovable about me, what do you see when we look at that evidence and we look at the evidence that we use to kind of unpick the column 2, that we use to unpick the evidence and look at alternative explanations? What would you summarize from that about, I guess, the way that all of your family members struggled with their difficulties? What would you say about that?
I guess, yeah, so despite that, I know that when I was young, all of my family, they struggled with their own self-worth.
Right.
And I think through doing this exercise, it's helped me understand that this impacted me and affected how I feel about myself. And although I was shouted at a lot, I think my parents struggled because they didn't know how to kind of show love and be affectionate, and maybe they didn't have it modeled for them either.
Great. Yeah. So it was really hard for them to kind of show their feelings, their positive feelings, and to manage their own negative feelings because of their own problems. And I guess that's quite important, isn't it, to separate that out here in the summary, because as a child, it's very easy to take that personally, to kind of see that, well, that must be because of me, that must be because of me doing something wrong, I must be the problem here, the bad guy here. And I think seeing the reality of what happened and seeing that this is just, I guess, part and parcel of their problems, their difficulties, helps to clarify the reality of the situation. Kind of almost like the adult perspective, as opposed to the child who doesn't know that, doesn't understand that, can't see the big picture, only knows what's going on right in front of her. So you grew up thinking, what did you grow up thinking?
Well, I thought it was all my fault.
Yeah.
No one told me that it wasn't, so I just thought there was something wrong with me, it must be me.
Okay. Yeah. And the evidence shows there's a lot more going on, than that. So you developed your anorexia as a way of when we look at the, I guess, what's happened here and the way that you kind of felt unlovable, you felt like you were a problem, you were taking up too much space. how did your anorexia kind of work in that context? How did it help you?
I guess it helped me to kind of shut down my own needs and feelings, helped me feel less of a burden, and I wanted to be less of a burden and a strain on my parents. So
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of feel less in the way.
Yeah. So because you viewed and you kind of understood the situation as being, it's because of me, their behaviors because of me, it meant that you almost came up with anorexia as a strategy, not consciously, but it was something that you used to cope and shut down your needs and feelings to try and help your family manage, which is quite an amazing thing, really. Although it was very detrimental to you, it was also your way of coping and trying to help your family because of the way that you understood the situation. But when you look back now, and you see, I guess, what was really going on, their own struggles, what would you kind of see their own struggles as being a result of you, of your siblings, or something else?
I don't think it was me and my siblings. I think it was more a reflection of their own relationship and their own struggles.
Yeah.
And due to their past and what difficulties they had experienced before we came along.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And when we look at your anorexia, and I know you can kind of get into that mindset of blaming yourself for your anorexia, and anorexia is evidence that I'm a problem and I'm unlovable. And you look at it in this context that actually it's a way of trying to cope and trying to actually help your family. That was the original intention of it. How has that, I guess, how has the anorexia blocked your, acted as an extra obstacle to you feeling lovable?
I guess, it's to use a word, blocked my capacity to kind of develop friendships, and
Yeah.
I have no time left for me because all my time and energy and thoughts are devoted to the anorexia.
Good. Yeah. And is that evidence that you can't be loved?
No, I guess there's just not the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the self-fulfilling nature of the stigma, isn't it? It's your coping mechanism, and that reinforces that belief. So just to summarize, you do have people in your life that care about you, and what other bits of evidence suggest that you are lovable that we can kind of finish off with in the summary?
So yeah, I do have people who care for me and I care for them, and I'm kind of working quite hard to rewrite the story and understand it in a more balanced view, and kind of alter my own story with the extended understanding of other factors that may have been at play throughout my life.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And if you can, if we can work in therapy on you learning how to step out of those old patterns, to see the truth, to see the real picture, and then you'll have many more choices and many opportunities to directly get the love and care that you need and deserve. So well done with that exercise.
Thank you.